I am very excited to stand now beside a man who needs no introduction in bullion market, Mr. Jeffrey Rhodes. Welcome, sir. Welcome to Bullion Bulletin.
Thank you.
And it's my pleasure to be here with you. Before I start asking the global aspects, I wanted to know about this your Egypt initiative.
For me, it's interesting. I made a decision about a year ago to retire. And I set up my own company, Rhodes Precious Metals Consultancy in Dubai. And I was looking forward to a nice, easy kind of retirement, doing a bit of work here and there. And then I was approached by New Egypt Gold, who are the biggest gold jewelry manufacturers in Egypt. They have their own gold refinery. It's a massive business, and they're clearly the leading physical gold merchant in Egypt. And they came to me to ask if I would head up their business, their bullion business, and take them forward. And so I found that an interesting challenge. As I delved into the market there, I was fascinated to know that 5,500 years ago, Egypt was the dominant force in the global gold industry.
Interesting.
And it's amazing. And there was gold mining all over Egypt. Those mines have really been mined out, as they say, but there is potential for a lot more. So anyway, I'm in Egypt, I'm looking at that market. You've seen I've published an article in the Bullion Bulletin recently about Egypt's gold market and the importance of gold to Egypt. You know, there are 90 million Egyptians, and I think 89.5 million love gold. And it's very similar to India. It has a lot of similarities between India and Egypt. You know, there are exchange controls, there are capital controls. It's not so easy to import and export gold. So it's very similar. And I would say, frankly, although India until recently was the number one physical gold market in the world, now number two, on a per capita basis, Egypt is probably number one. Really number one, because Egyptians love gold. And so my job is to take Egypt and bring it in to the international community, and that's what I'm aiming to do.
So regulations, investment,
it's all very strict. For example, banks are not allowed to be involved in the gold industry in Egypt, not at all. Similar to India, where banks really are not allowed to be bullion banks. They can import gold, but they can't really buy and sell it. They're not really a bullion bank. Same in Egypt, and I see the similarities as being remarkable.
That geopolitical tension that is going on in that part of the world, is that any kind of hindrance it can put in the future?
No, it's obviously been a problem.
I am asking in respect of the country risk of bringing bullion from there to here.
I understand exactly, and look, all I can say is, if you like, I'm voting with my feet. I've been there for the last 5 weeks, enjoyed it, felt very safe. I think the mood on the street is very positive. You know, the new presidency, people love him. Really, and I've been fortunate enough in my career to have a personal audience with President Mandela.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I've met Sheikh Mohammed, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, on more than one occasion. And what I see of President Sisi in terms of impact on the country is very similar. You know, I mean, I may be talking my book, but I'm very bullish for Egypt PLC, and that necessarily means very bullish for the Egyptian gold market.
What you are looking, whatever the gold you should mine from Egypt, you are looking to market in Asian continent?
There's really a market where you see a lot of flows, imports, exports, secondary market, because Egyptian women love to change their jewelry. You know, almost weekly, you'll see old jewelry being substituted for new jewelry. So you see this ebb and flow of secondary gold coming into the market and jewelry going, you know, being sold against it. It really is fascinating. Approach stretches across North Africa. You know, in the sort of Arab-speaking African world, the women love to change their jewelry. So you get this continuous flow of secondary metal. Now that really is the heart of Egypt's gold market. There is some gold mining there. There's the Sukari gold mine, but it's very low-key, small scale at the moment, but there is a belief that there's a much wider and broader base of gold mining possibilities and potential there. And you know, when I went to Dubai in 1997, I could feel the vibrancy, I could feel the possibilities that could happen there, and it happened. You know what? I have a very similar feeling about Egypt.
Best of luck to you for Egypt. Next question, I should move on. Consumer demand moving from west to east. So I wanted your view. How are you looking at this factor?
Look, very simply, if you look at Asia and the physical offtake in Asia, it accounts for 75% of annual demand. And so the real world of physical gold has definitely gone from west to east.
Right.
Okay, all you have in the west is bullion banking.
Right.
Okay, that's all you have. And the bullion banking is under threat. I mean, it's under severe regulatory pressure. And so you've had the physical markets move east. I think you could see the bullion banking markets follow the same course. I think you could see the evolution and development of bullion banking in places like Dubai, in Singapore, in China, in India. The solution to India's current account deficit and this kind of love-hate relationship with gold. You know, Indians love gold, the authorities hate it, okay? But fundamentally, the reason the authorities here are so concerned about physical gold flows is simply this. If you buy physical gold, you take money out of your bank account. The money goes out of the pool of banking liquidity. However, if you were able to have a gold account in the same way as you have a rupee account or a sterling account or a dollar account, you can have gold, you can have an investment in gold without withdrawing it from the banking system, without withdrawing it from the pool of liquidity. And even more so with the move towards gold monetization, and this conference is talking a lot about that, that brings liquidity into the banking system. And so I think the way forward for the East, and particularly for India, is to embrace bullion banking fully and make gold accounts pari passu, just the same as a rupee account or a dollar account. And I think that would solve the current account deficit and actually would make India, if you could monetize 25,000 tons of gold, it would make India probably the wealthiest country in the world. So I would urge the authorities, if they see this interview, to really take note. I think embrace bullion banking and India would really benefit.
Your vast experience of more than 40 years, how this monetization scheme can be implemented? Do you have, if you can give a very in short, a small clue to the market observers, can be implemented in the country and how beneficial it should be?
Well, I think it would be massively beneficial, as I say. So how to implement it? Well, I think if you look at paper currency in India, I think you have 5 denominations,
right,
banknotes.
Right.
So you could have 5 denominations of bullion bars, with those bullion bars being produced by accredited refineries. Maybe not just one, but if you had a range of accredited refineries here in India producing the small bars, then slightly larger, I say 5 denominations going from maybe 10 grams up to 1,000 grams, up to a kilogram, and be able to take that gold and put it in your bank account, put it in your gold account, okay? And then when you want the gold, take the gold out of the bank account. Now, I know that proposals are on the table, and I saw a fantastic article with Mr. Khosla, Rajesh Khosla, really setting out the answers. Now, follow what Mr. Khosla is saying, and I think if you want, very quickly, my tip, follow his guidelines, and then you will have a very successful bullion banking industry.
Right. In your opinion, do you think Asia, of course, is the largest, as you say, largest physical market. Do you feel that Asia as a whole, I am talking about Dubai, Singapore, including India, Hong Kong, do you think there is a need to develop a new bullion products in the market?
You're thinking about the gold fixing. I think it's fair to say international bullion market for 35 years,
right,
and the first 20 years in London. Okay, and
You are a previous banker as well.
Yeah, I know. 35 years largely in bullion banking, and I ran the gold fixing for Samuel Montague back in the 1980s, so really I know what I'm talking about. Fixing is still a fantastic institution, but it's under pressure. The banks in the West are under regulatory pressure. They've had fine after fine for this and for that, and I'm sure the management of those banks are looking at the situation and saying there's just too much regulatory risk in this. And so there is an opportunity, as I say, for the Eastern financial institutions, for the banks, to take advantage of that, still retaining very high levels of compliance and KYC and so on. But their clients in the East love gold.
Right.
In the UK and in the US, the locals have no interest in gold. In the East, there is an affinity of gold that will never go away. And so I do think that there's a massive opportunity for banks in India, for banks in the UAE, for China, for Singapore, in Asia, to take advantage of, if you like, the growing issues within the Western banks for doing bullion, and actually take advantage of that and establish real full-scale, full-service bullion banking in these regions, and I think it's the way forward.
As since you have been in Dubai, and you are the big name, how the relation between Dubai and India can be developed more friendly in doing bullion business? What is the potentiality of Dubai market to offer next 5 to 10 years you have been?
Yeah, I think when you look at Dubai, it reminds me so much of London. You know, London was and is an entrepot port, and it was the gateway between Europe and the Americas. Okay, I see Dubai as the gateway that is linking Africa and Europe with the Indian subcontinent, the rest of Asia, but particularly India. So it's a feeder market, it's a supply market and a taker market with India. And that role I think it does need to be consolidated. I think, for example, I would urge the authorities here to embrace Dubai Good Delivery. Everyone talks about London Good Delivery.
Why not DGD?
Why not DGD? So I'd encourage much closer relationships between the regional exchanges. I'm chairing a panel session later, and on that there's the NCDX, there's the MCX, there's the DGCX, and there's the Shanghai Singapore Gold Exchange. Okay, so we have these 4 institutions later. I like to somehow bring them together. I don't know, in some kind of memorandum of understanding or fungibility of contracts or cross-margining, but certainly, and this can be led at a government level, where memorandums of understanding are signed between UAE and India, for example. I would really urge that, and for India to accept Dubai Good Delivery as the benchmark rather than London Good Delivery. You know, I don't really get the London when there's a credible regional alternative.
It's a great message, I must say, what you just said. How are you enjoying this conference? As usual, you have been coming here since the beginning of this conference. What kind of improvement you have seen?
I think it's highly professional. There is a conference, an LBMA conference in Peru. I've actually got no interest in going to that. To come to this conference here in Pune, absolutely must attend conference, and this is the real gold industry. Okay, I think India, second largest gold off-taker in the world. For me, it's still number 1. You have to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.